my name's John.
Hi, John.
Thank you for this. It's been soothing, I guess is a good way to put it. I guess my question has to do with the spectrum of upset, right? That, you know, looking, you know, there are everyday upsets that, you know, you messed up my latte. To the deeper upsets of, you know, that trigger the worst fears of abandonment or unworthiness or, you know, whatever it is that drives me or I guess other people as well, you know. And I have an overarching upset about, I have a 14-year-old daughter who's been fighting a terminal illness all her life, and she spends a lot of time in the hospital. You know, we're constantly dealing with this, right?
Sure.
So it's like I'm in I had a therapist call it sort of a post-traumatic stress syndrome that doesn't have the post, you know, that it's sort of an ongoing thing. And so it's sort of like I have a bit of a gaping wound that I walk around with, and a feeling of abandonment from God, right? And at the same time, I've accepted Claire's condition. And in relationship, the way that this shows up is that when, in those moments when my partner is not loving me the way that I want to be loved or showing up in the way that I would expect her to show up, you know, given everything that I have to go through, you know, quote unquote, what happens is it all gets intermingled, you know, the great upset about what I go through, the childhood stuff, and, you know, this the general relationship stuff. And sometimes I don't know what I'm upset about. You know, is it that you're not fluffing my pillow properly, or is it that my daughter may be dying? Is it that you know? And so I don't know if I'm articulating this properly, but
you are.
Thank you. So I'd like some real world tools for dealing in those moments, if you don't mind.
Which real world? So I would submit to you that from a spiritual perspective, you have no idea what it is, daughter, I think I heard you say, that your daughter is working on through that experience. When you assume that it's a terrible thing, then you place her in the role of victim. You can't really love a victim. Can't really love a victim. All you can do is feel sorry for them. If you can accept her as equal to you in terms of spiritual evolution, and that you really want to love her enough to support her in whatever it is that she's working through, and give up the victim role, then you can really love her.
Oh, she's way ahead of me in spiritual development. Yeah.
Well, see, but we're not talking about her, we're talking about you. Do you get the sense of what I'm saying here?
Sure.
So the first thing is to let go of this whole business about this is some terrible thing that's happening to her. Why is this terrible thing happening to this poor little girl?
That's a large jump. Sometimes it's a large.
And spirituality is not a terrible thing. There is no such thing as a terrible thing. There only is what is. Everything else we put on top of it. We interpret it. We make it right, wrong. We add the charge to it. It doesn't exist in spiritual reality.
Yeah, it seems like I'm really living in the physical world with that. Yeah.
Well, anything that I could tell you about that in the physical world, I don't think would be very helpful.
But there are other things we could share.
Sure, I'm all ears.
So, you know, one of the principles of spiritual psychology that seems very germane to what you're sharing is this. Consider this. Nothing outside of you causes your disturbance. Nothing outside of you causes your disturbance. All becauses are merely triggers to internal unresolved issues inviting completion. See, that those two principles right there have the potential to really help you shift into another context.
I don't necessarily, I guess my question was more about if I don't have the wherewithal to own in the moment, you know, what is happening, because it's so upsetting, because it's so triggering.
Yes, yes.
Then what do you do? Because what you're describing requires me to have some rational thought, which goes completely out the window in that moment. Yeah.
So are you interested in resolving, dissolving that disturbance that resides within your consciousness? Sure. So there's a very simple tool that we teach in the Master's program. It's called Freeform Writing. Freeform Writing. And just the basics of freeform writing, you get an 8.5 by 11 pad of paper, because it's something you need to actually write out. You never want to do freeform writing on your computer. People have done it with dire consequences.
Okay.
So
I'm forewarned.
Yeah. So you get a pad. You want to be in an environment where you're not going to be disturbed, because when you're doing freeform writing, you don't want to be interrupted. You don't want to take phone calls. You don't want to go and answer the door or anything like that. So if you live with other people, maybe you need to put a sign on your bedroom door saying, you know, whatever, when you'll be available again. And you just allow yourself to write freely all of the disturbance, all of the upset. You know, I'm so angry. This is so unfair. Why does she have to suffer this way? And it doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be in complete sentences. Sometimes the words come so fast and the energy is so strong that people just will end up scribbling, you know, as they're thinking the thoughts. And you want to write at least 10 minutes, no more than 2 hours. No more than 2 hours. And I recommend that people write until they feel the energy shift. Because sometimes something poetic will come through, sometimes spiritual wisdom comes through. I often complete my own freeform writing with compassionate self-forgiveness for the judgments. You know, and just in being with you, my sense is that deep down in there, perhaps there's something having to do with it not being fair.
Well, there's a lot to do with not being able to help her.
Yeah.
You know, that I can't.
Or so you think.
Yeah. And I would suggest to you the greatest help that you can be to her is when you restore yourself to the place of peace, of equanimity, of loving and compassion, because that emanation coming from you is healing to her. It brings tremendous comfort to her.
Sure.
So does freeform writing sound like something you might be willing to experiment with?
Absolutely.
See, it's a simple tool. It's an in-the-world tool. It really works. And the best time to do it is when you're triggered. See, if you can in that moment say, okay, I'm going to do the experiment of freeform writing. Excuse me, I'll be back later, whatever.
Right.
So that you extricate from yourself from whatever you're involved in.
Right.
And you allow yourself to do this. One of the other things that we teach in the program is something that we refer to as 32-day processes. Doing a practice of some particular kind for 32 days. And freeform writing for 32 days could be amazing. Doing it once would be helpful. Doing it at intervals would be fantastic. So there are different ways you can approach this.
Okay. No, that's a very helpful tip. Thank you.
See, but if you can begin in the freeform writing to let the emotion up and let the judgments out, and if you begin to work with freeform writing in combination at the end of it with compassionate self-forgiveness for those judgments, you are going to feel a lot better. A lot better. And I think you'll find yourself better able to maintain your equanimity and just experiencing more peace, more joy, more compassion, more loving. I really get how much you love your daughter.
Thank you.
How
Thank
important
you.
she is to you.
Yeah, because I don't want other people to suffer because of my pain.
I really hear that. And the one other thing I didn't share earlier that's very important, when you're done with freeform writing, you don't want to read it over and you don't want to keep it around. You want to burn it. Burn it immediately.
Okay.
Because it's just like, I'm releasing this spirit. I just give this all to you.
Thank you.
But we can give you all, if you want to do that, we'll give you all a little help. Don't do that in a hotel room. You just set off one smoke detector and then you'll never do it again.
I have done it.
Thank you. I have a fire pit just for that.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much
Thank you.
for sharing. Thank you.